I'm Kim Williams, and welcome back everyone to class number 2 in this short course of native plant landscaping. And we're going to really put on our botanist hat today and talk about the different plant species and plant communities and really dive in to the different needs for each plant. And so with that, let's see, I am going to stop my video so you can just see the slides and not me, and we will get moving. So here we are, landscaping with native plants. I just appreciate everyone that is dedicated to landscaping with native plants. We need more of them in the world. Why should we landscape with native plants? The benefits are numerous. I mean, they adapted here, they evolved here, they're adapted to our climate and soils. They're naturally pest resistant and disease resistant. And our native fauna, as well as our native invertebrates, they have evolved with our plants, and they're dependent on them for food, energy, resources, nesting resources, and habitat. And most native plants, once they are established, are self-sustainable. So this is pretty typical here. We have chopped up the landscape, and this is what we have right here. And we got a lot of lawn. So this is what we're trying to avoid. You know, you see all these lawn areas, and it's just not really favorable to habitat. And so this is what we're trying to avoid, is the lawnmower, and also the fertilizers as well, which just end up in our waterways. 1 hour of lawnmower emissions equal about 100 miles of auto driving. Now the statistics are a little bit varied there, but really a lawnmower carbon emissions are about 10 times as much as that of an automobile. It's just something to kind of think about as you decide how much lawn you're going to put in. So hopefully you guys got my video about making a base map. I'm sorry I couldn't get that going on the last presentation, but really just to start your landscaping plans, you just want to get that base map. Make your list here of your needs and your wants. And let me just go like this. There we go, little pointer. Make your list of your needs and your wants and your dreams. What do you want for your landscape? A little bit of forethought really helps to just make things efficient. And hopefully you've all analyzed your site. You've looked at your soils. What kind of soils do you have? What kind of shade and sun and microclimate? And then you just slowly start putting together your plan. As you develop your plan further, you want to really make sure and plant in plant communities. You know, the wet plants go in the wet sites and the dry plants go in the dry sites. And that's what we're going to do today, is step number 4 here. We're going to develop more detailed designs and really dig into each plant species and what they can handle. So as you move forward on making your planting plan, you want to really take your site and what do you have there? You want to work with your existing vegetation. If you've got trees and a forest, you know, you don't really want to take down everything and start from zero. Work with what you have. You know, you want to minimize your lawn area. It's really nice to have open space, but there are other things you can do instead of lawn. You know, you can do eco-turf, you can do meadows, and yeah, just really keep it reasonable with the lawn. You want to mimic natural habitat types. You know, plant the wet plants with the wet plants, the dry plants with the dry plants. And before you pick your species, you really want to analyze heights, and we're talking mature heights for our species of plants and trees and shrubs. And do you have overhead lines, all of that. So yeah, Are you going to choose evergreen or deciduous? And the whole point is that you want to create diversity and you want to create habitat. A few basic landscape design techniques and concepts are creating harmony. And when you create harmony, you want to include function, fit, and form. And function is, it's got to serve the needs, your wants and needs. And is it going to do that with what you have, what nature has given you? Are you able to meet your needs and wants? And harmony, embrace nature. You know, you don't want something that is high maintenance with high fertilizers. You want it to be self-sustainable. That's the goal, really. And then we can just sit back and relax, right? And also don't forget about beauty and form and aesthetic harmony, mass, color, texture, unity, balance. Those are all some basic landscaping design techniques as well. And for your design details, you really want to use your existing structures and vegetation strategically to really define spaces and or little rooms within your landscape, creating privacy or little sitting areas, a Zen garden, a relaxed garden, and balance, rhythm, and simplicity. You don't want to go too wild with the colors, 2 or 3 colors, and they can vary seasonally. And when you actually get down to digging the plants in, 3s, 5s, and 7s are the numbers you want for that more of a natural feel. And creating focal points, fountains, or little benches are just really fun things to add to your landscape. And don't forget about your hardscapes and walkways or pathways. And always consider permeable pavement or pervious pavement as well. And I'm just going to show this slide again. This is just a really great way to look at your landscape, is the zone approach. Got the high traffic area right here where your hose can reach, where you've got probably your food garden can be in zone 1 or 2, and it's your people place, your cultivated systems, your natural, or you can do your annual flowering baskets, your fuchsia baskets, because this is where you're going to be watering the most. Zone 2, kind of a shared space a little bit further out, and it can be a nice transition zone, a meadow, into the wild areas. You want to go more wild as you get further away from your house. And here it is again from the side view: high maintenance, middle maintenance, low disturbance. And this is where you want to leave, just go wild here and leave snags, leave branches and brush heaps, and low disturbance. You can maybe have a nice little path through the forest so you can enjoy it. As you move forward in your planting plan, you want to plant the community concept. And plants are naturally grouped together according to moisture requirements and soil preferences. And always consider the mature heights of plants before you put them in. So when deciding the right plant for the right place, you want to get the most impact that you can for your plant. Is your plant going to give you food right here for human, livestock, or wildlife, or habitat for fish, wildlife, and beneficial insects? Do you have a stream, a salmon-bearing stream, or even just a seasonal tributary that goes through your property? You want to protect those areas. Those are critical areas. They're really important. And is your purpose to modify your microclimate a little bit? Stop the wind, or create shade, or screen out your neighbors. So thinking through all of these things are just really important before you get started and start buying plants. A lot of people run out to the nurseries and start buying plants first without really giving it a lot of thought. And nectar, you want to get nectar providing flowers. Nectar is what feeds our pollinators, and a lot of our cultivars out there, they are bred to create big, beautiful flowers, and their nectaries, their nectar glands are reduced because they're just to create these big showy flowers. So plants with lots of nectar should be a deciding factor. And mulch, you want to create good habitat, create good mulch. So I just put this in here to help you consider more things as you move forward with your landscaping. You know, you want to really consider all of your utility lines and how far apart your pathways should be, and you know what you've got going on here. So it's just a little bit of forethought is really important. So I'm going to dive right into the different species of plants. I'm going to start with the trees, and I'm going to start with our deciduous trees. Now, I could have gone on and on and on, made a million slides about a million different plants, but these are just some of the ones that we can probably find at nurseries around here. So the Gary oak. The Gary oak is a wonderful tree. It is suited for well-drained soils, dry, rocky slopes. It can get up to 75 feet tall, and it has deep roots. Now, it is more of a drier area tree. So say you live out west of Joyce, you get a lot of rain, your soils are a little bit more clay, probably not going to be the best, although I have seen it grown right next to riverbanks, but it does like well-drained soil. And the thing to consider when considering plants is how many species of caterpillars or insects that it hosts. There's a really fantastic study done by Doug Tallamy, and he studied insect-plant interactions. And he found that oak trees, the Oregon white oak or the Gary oak, had really high content of species of caterpillars. And remember, we want these caterpillars to feed our songbirds, and let's see, it was 5,000 caterpillars are needed to raise one clutch of chickadees, is what he found. And I think this is a really great study. He is located out of Ohio, and I think these kinds of studies need to be done more with just Northwest plants. So it's a really great study topic for someone in college or someone trying to get a master's degree. And here's our big leaf maple. This is just one of our beautiful trees. It's a big tree. It has incredible autumn foliage. It turns nice and golden. It doesn't turn the nice red color that the trees on the East Coast turn, but boy, that golden is really amazing. And the amount of epiphytes that grow on this tree is incredible. All these mosses and lichens that grow here are wonderful habitat for all sorts of beetles and insects. Yeah, so this is a tall tree, can get up to 100 feet, can be in variable soils. It doesn't like to be sopping wet, but it can handle wet to dry soils. And it gets pretty wide too. And here are our two smaller maples. We have the vine maple, Acer Surcinatum, approximately 30 feet tall, and the Douglas maple, Acer glabrum, about 30 feet tall. Now, these are just approximate. I've seen them taller and I've seen them shorter as well. The vine maple is this wonderful maple. It generally has about 9 to 10 points on its leaf, right here, whereas the Douglas maple has 3 main points. That's just one way to identify them. The Douglas maple can handle drier conditions. It's a little bit more drought tolerant and can handle a little bit more sunny conditions. The vine maple can handle forest margins or it can handle deep shade as well. And once again, you have this wonderful moss coverage, the epiphyte coverage on these maples. Incredible. Both of these maples, you can modify them. You know, you can prune them, and they take well to that. So you can shape them as much as you want or let them just go wild as well. Some of our smaller woody trees and shrubs are our Pacific dogwood. What a lovely tree right here. Cornus natalii can get up to 60 feet tall in direct sunlight. It does like dappled sunlight at least. Well-drained soils for both of these. And this one is also another one that can handle pruning as well. Just gorgeous with those white flowers in the springtime. And they do, you know, they only last during the spring. Just a beautiful tree. It should be in everybody's yard. Serviceberry over here. Amelanchier anifolia. 10 to 25 feet, depending on conditions. It can handle full sun, and it gets beautiful autumn foliage right here. And these puffy white flowers. They are not real showy, but boy, they're just gorgeous. And the berry, I tell you, the berry is amazing. This is also called honeyberry. It tastes just like honey. And so just one of those really great plants to have in your landscape. Anything that has fruit will attract birds. So, and this is also a great one for humans to eat as well. So Cascara here, this is a wonderful tree, and it likes drier sites and grows sort of in the middle of the dry woodland forest. It has this beautiful blueberry. It is a favorite tree for cedar waxwings. I mean, that is a fancy bird. If you don't know what a cedar waxwing is, you should check it out. Great spot. Anything with a perch and a berry works really great for attracting the birds. And here is Pacific crabapple right here. This is another fruit tree. You get this nice little droop of fruits here. And this is one of the most sour apples you could ever taste. It is edible, but extremely sour, and 40 feet tall. It's messy though, super messy. It's not one you want it if you want a nice landscaped, sculpted area, but boy, the birds love it. Pacific crabapple is one of my favorite things to put into jam as well. It is, I just add it instead of lemon. It's so sour, it's so acidic, and it's just really fun to add those little native fruits incorporate them into your food. Birds love it. I mean, lots of birds, quail, anything. And going into more of the deciduous trees here, we have our willow trees. The willow trees are wonderful plants. They're also messy type plants. They're, you know, really just kind of for that wild look. We have the Pacific willow, Salix lucida. They have pointed leaves right here, whereas these other willows have more rounded leaves here. Now, willows are pretty hard to identify unless you have a flower and a mature leaf. We have the Sitka willow, Salix sitchensis, and all these willows are approximately 25 feet tall. They are favorites for birds and caterpillars as well. And then we have the Schooler's willow. The Sitka willow, sometimes you can tell the difference because the back side of the leaf is silvery, have silvery hairs right here, but they have that nice dark green on the top. So wonderful trees, great for wet sites, and yeah, a wonderful habitat tree. And our black cottonwood, Populus balsamifera, subspecies Trichocarpa, is right here, this one. This is a tall tree. This is 150 feet and gets up to 150 feet. Amazing tree to help build soil, and it drops its leaves. It adds great material to the forest floor, has this wonderful, like just this moss along the trunks, and a great tree, especially along the river. The black cottonwood was one of the champion trees in the Elwha restoration project, as it regenerated quickly. It has deep roots. Its roots chase water, so it does need a little bit moist. It thrives in that moist area, but I'm surprised. I have found it in some pretty dry areas too, and I think it's because the roots chase water. We've got the red alder tree, and the red alder tree is just wonderful for the soil. It grows quickly and it biodegrades quickly. It adds a ton of nitrogen to the forest floor. All the leaves drop suddenly, and it just really adds a lot to the forest. It gets up to 120 feet tall. That is tall for an alder. It usually falls before then. And, you know, a lot of people stay away from these because they fall when they get too old. But if you have an area that's away from your house, plant some red alder. It will help build soil and really just contribute to the soil building processes. And yeah. Quaking aspen is another wonderful deciduous tree that we have small populations of around the Olympic Peninsula. It does spread. Same with the bitter cherry, it spreads. You can kind of see this growth habitat with the bitter cherry, the big ones, and then it kind of spreads off to the sides with the smaller ones. Both these trees get about 30 feet. I think quaking aspen gets a little bit taller than 30 feet. And wonderful native trees. The quaking aspen is so pretty in the wind with all these little leaves rustling. And the bitter cherry gets that fruit that just attracts all the wildlife. Bitter cherry is in the rose family. The rose family has the typical 5 petals and protruding stamens right here. And so I'm going to jump into some evergreen trees. And when you think of evergreen trees, you don't really think of madrona, but madrona is an evergreen tree, Arbuteus menziesii. It stays green year round. You do get a lot of leaf litter with leaves dying back. They, you know, are constantly regenerating. And you also, it has this beautiful peeling bark, this kind of orangey, red, brown peeling bark. So if you're going to plant a madrona, just know that you will get some leaf litter, some drops here. And it's not a bad thing. That's great. It's actually going to just add to the soil structure. This one can be found on slopes, dry sites. It does not like its roots disturbed when transplanting it. So you just want to treat it really careful, really, you know, with caution. It's just a beautiful tree. Madrona means mother in Latin, and it's just kind of your iconic Northwest by the sea tree. It's really good. And moving on to other conifers, and we have the Douglas fir right here, which is an amazing timber tree, can get up to 210 feet at mature height. It prefers full sun. It won't tolerate shade, like full shade, especially if you're starting it out as a start. It's just a wonderful tree. Tons of animals use it. And this is what it's looked like if you're not familiar with it. And then you have the grand fir. These two often grow together. Grand fir can handle a little bit more moisture than the Douglas fir, and it also can handle a little bit more shade, but it's really variable. I mean, it's dry to moist sites. It also gets up around 210 feet. Its needles lay flat. It's like they're parted right here from the branch, and their cones on the grand fir go straight up. And cones that go straight up are typical for true firs, whereas cones on the Douglas fir is not really a true fir, botanically speaking. It's pseudotsuga, which is false fir, and they hang down. Just a little side note about firs. Then these two trees, we have the Western Red Cedar and the Western Hemlock. The Western Red Cedar right here is an amazing tree. It's just, there's so much written about the cedar. It's useful for so much. It's just so naturally disease resistant. It's a cultural use plant for all the indigenous communities around here. The bark is stripped, and the inner bark is used for a ton of crafts and clothing and different regalia for our tribes here, and it can get up to 200 feet tall. It can handle wet sites. It can also handle shade. When it's first starting out, you need to have it be a little bit more moist and a little shaded. It doesn't like to be in the direct sun, but once it reaches full height, or once it reaches at least 15 feet, it can handle a little bit more direct sun as well. The Western Red Cedar can handle wet. It likes wet places, and it likes the deep woodland and the wet places. It can handle floods, temporary floods. It can just really handle the water. And the Western Hemlock is also a shade tolerant tree. It needs shade to get started. If you're planting a little seedling, then you need to give it shade and water. It's also around 210 feet tall. Great tree. Its roots are just a little bit more shallow, so it could fall over. Just something to remember, but an amazing tree. And I did want to, since we were talking about the cedar, I just wanted to say a little bit about the Western Red Cedar Die Off concerns. So for about the past 10 years or so, many organizations have been tracking Western Red Cedar Die Off. And it's something that's happening where we're just getting these die off like this and this right here. And it's something where we are gathering information, and the conclusion looks like it is because of drier conditions and drought. This tree cannot handle drought. I mean, it can handle a couple years of drought if it's a full-grown tree, but year after year after year of reduced water and exposure to drought, takes this tree out. And so when you see a tree like this means it's been deprived of enough water for several years. It doesn't happen usually in one season. And then, thinning canopy is a part of this cedar dieback. Just, you get these thin canopy. And then here, this is just a crispy. It doesn't have enough water right here. It's really linked with climate changes and our water changes as, our water regimes are changing. And this is one species that might not make it through all of our climate change impacts. And it's just kind of sad. It's really hard to get a grip on that and to really just bring that. But, you know, if you can plant it in a protected area, in a wet area, that would be fantastic. So more conifers. So shore pine here is one of our shorter conifers, Pinus contorta, subspecies contorta, approximately 60 feet tall. It can handle variable conditions. It can be on the edges of cliffs, and it likes to grow not in a perfect tree shape, but it grows all different shapes, all craggly. It can grow on cliffs and it can grow on forest edges. Yeah, really great. If you need something a little bit shorter, but you want a conifer, the shore pine is a great option. And over here we have Sitka Spruce. Sitka Spruce is Picea sitchensis. It gets approximately 200 feet tall. It's a big tree and it has scaly bark like this. We call it fish scales, some people do. And it also has a scaly fish scale type of cone. So it's easy to identify. It's super pokey. If you put your fingers around the needles, it's super sharp and pokey. And it is a full sun to partial shade. It is more of a coastal, naturally occurring plant or tree, but we do find it inland as well. And one restoration technique is to plant Sitka spruce in the same hole as Western red cedar, because Western red cedar is loved by elk and deer. It's pretty much like candy for elk and deer. And the hope is that the Sitka spruce grows a little bit faster than the cedar, and it will poke the nose of the elk or deer to try and deter them. And so sometimes it works. You do need to go back and girdle or cut out the Sitka spruce once the cedar is tall enough, because the whole point is to try to get the cedar established without being so heavily browsed. Other great conifers, we have the mountain hemlock over here, Tsuga mertensiana. It can get up to 120 feet tall, higher elevations, and same here with the subalpine fir. It can get up to 150 feet tall, and it can handle higher elevations. Both of these trees also can be planted at lower elevations. They can handle heavy snowpack, and they're just all around great trees. I mean, I just think they're beautiful trees, this like the conical shape, and then just the mountain hemlock. Wonderful trees to put in the landscape. But know if you're like super, super low and super, super wet, they may not thrive the best. Well-drained soils for these two. And this is the subalpine fir. It's a true fir. The cones go up. And a few more trees. We have the western white pine here, Pinus monticola, up to 120 feet. Really variable soils. Well-drained soils are where it thrives though the most. And Pacific silver fir, Abies amabilis, 150 feet, tall, moist forests, and it likes the moist forests. I've seen them in a lot of different areas, and yeah, just a really, really great tree. And the Pacific yew tree. Pacific yew tree is often overlooked. It is a slow growing sort of shrubby tree up to 30 feet tall. Needs to have shade. It needs to have deep forest. It grows underneath forest canopy. Wonderful tree. It's got this peely bark here. The wood is highly prized wood. It's just really hard and beautiful. And it does get this red berry, which is poisonous to humans, but wonderful for the birds. It has a pointy tip on the needle. It's just slow growing. It's just really neat when you can come across a yew tree, because They're not real prolific, but they're out there and they are so slow growing. They're one of my favorite trees. So now I'm going to just get into the deciduous shrubs a bit. And so these are some of the shrubs that I'm going to be talking about. These are in a different color because these are great for wet sites, and also spirea. I didn't have it on here. I don't have a slide for spirea, but it's really great for wet sites as well. So we have red flowering currant, Ribes sanguineum, and Indian plum, Ommularia cerasiformis. Two early bloomers. Indian plum can bloom as early as February, and March, April for red flowering currant. I mean, beautiful, amazing. I mean, that color, you can't beat it. I think everybody should have these two in their yard. The Indian plum does create this drupe of plum fruits, which is mostly a seed. They are quite bitter, but edible. I like to try all of my wild fruits, but I do leave most of them for the birds. So, mock orange, Philadelphus louisii, and ocean spray, Holodiscus discolor. These two can handle the dry soils. They have these white blooms. The mock orange is related to the lilac. They are fragrant and small, wonderful. Oh boy, when they bloom and you get some sun on them, oh, the scent is amazing. They are slightly slow growing, and I say that, and I've had people tell me that they're fast growing. So it's really if you find the right conditions for them. They're not super showy. This picture is really showy. It's just like perfect conditions and exposed, good sunlight. But in general, they're not quite as showy as this. The ocean spray is also called ironwood. The wood is really hard. Indigenous tribes have used the wood for tools, you know, eating tools, digging tools, stuff like that. Really, really hard wood, a beautiful spray of flowers. I mean, when the ocean spray is out, it's only out for like a couple weeks, and then the flowers all turn brown and they persist on the shrub. So it's not the most showy or beautiful when it's not in bloom, but I just love it. I think it's a great plant. And these are both drier sites. They like sun, you know, at least part sun, full to part sun. Here we have thimbleberry, Rubus perviflorus. This berry is one of the best berries you ever can eat. They go to mush quick. You got to eat them quick for the birds, and they're great for hedges. They have a pithy stem, so a lot of insects like to crawl in and overwinter in their stems, and just real great fuzzy leaves. Then we have the Corylus cornuta, hazelnut, the beaked hazelnut. And honestly, I have never seen one with fruit. I think it's just kind of rare, but this is what it looks like. If you have one that fruits, boy, that's great. Take a picture and send it to me. This I stole this off the internet. Wonderful, you know, hazelnut nut tree, and it's lower grow, 25, 20 feet, and beautiful autumn foliage. And here are the roses. We have several roses, but I'm just going to talk about the bald hip rose, Rosa gymnocarpa, and the Nootka rose, Rosa nutkana. Bald hip rose is the forest rose. This is the one you want to plant under the canopy. It is more delicate. It has less flowers. It's less prolific. It's so wonderfully fragrant. And it's called bald hip rose because here's the hip and there are no sepals coming out. Whereas down here on the Nootka rose, here's the hip and there's the sepals coming out of the tip of the hip. So the Nootka rose is just wonderful. It can handle full sun. It likes full sun or forest margins. It's aggressive though. I mean, it spreads by suckers. It's a wonderful hedgerow if you want to make a hedgerow for wildlife or for just dividing your property. And it's great habitat in here for mice and overwintering bumblebees, you know, and lots of things can find refuge in these hedgerows. They are pokey. The rose hip makes a great jam, rose hip and crabapple, like I said, but you don't want to eat the hairy seeds inside the rose hip because they can irritate your stomach. You should look up recipes and make sure before you eat any wild food. But I'm telling you, rose hip and crabapple jam, very, very good. Here's another example of a hedgerow, and there is the Nootka rose mixed with snowberry, which is Symphorcarpus albus. Symphorcarpus albus is a wonderful shrub, and it has this white berry that is poisonous, but birds love it. Grouse, they love it. And this is what it looks like. And it does lose its leaves in the winter. So this is what you would be looking at if you plant it. Rose hip and snowberry spread by suckers. So if you have a hedgerow, I mean, you can let it get big, or you can just do a quick mow along the edge as well. Some elderberries. We have blue elderberry and red elderberry, Sambucus rulea and Sambucus racemosa. The red elderberry is not edible. A lot of people confuse that and think that it is edible. It will not kill you, but it will not make you feel good. It has pointed flowers, triangle-shaped pointed flowers, and can handle being in the full shade or direct sun. It's great underneath the canopy. Both of these have a pithy stem, which is wonderful for overwintering insects. Blue elderberry is amazing edible. It is highly antiviral. Blue elderberry pancakes are wonderful, and it has flat flowers, flat umbel flowers, not triangular. It needs full sun though, right here. And two plants that you should really have on your landscape. And here we have red osier dogwood. It is wonderful for moist to wet sites. I have seen it on dry sites, but it just thrives on the moist to wet sites. It has this white umbel flower, these wonderful red twigs here, which are great for all sorts of crafts and, you know, anything you want to do. And it gets these really excellent colors in the fall with the reds and the purples and the greens. It's just a beautiful, beautiful plant. It's shrubby and messy. It's great for a hedgerow if you have kind of a moist to wet site, and the berries are good for the birds. Here are two more wet sites, moist to dry sites. Pacific ninebark, Physocarpus capitatus, and black twinberry, Linicera involucrata. So the twinberry is perfect for hummingbirds, as is the red flowering currant. I don't think I mentioned that. And it grows this twinberry here, super, super bitter. And the Pacific ninebark has this round puffball of flowers, but they're kind of, you know, they're not real showy. And it has this shredded bark here. Two great medium-sized woody shrubs. And so I'm going to go through a few evergreen shrubs. So we have our Evergreen Huckleberry here. It's a wonderful berry right here that you can eat, and they stay green all year round. They're perfect like in the garden because you can shape them. And same with Salal, Gaultheria Shalon. This can be aggressive. If it finds a place that it likes, it can take over. So you would have to just, it grows by little suckers coming out. You would just have to maintain that. But it has a great edible berry. Both of these have wonderful edible berry, and you can kind of trim them into hedges and shape them if that's the look you want. Here we have our Oregon grapes, our Mahonias. We have tall Oregon grape and low Oregon grape. Mahonia aquifolium is the tall Oregon grape. It can handle more sun. It actually prefers more of full sun, and it has less leaves, but it's taller. Probably it can get up to 5 feet or even more. And then we have the low Oregon grape. It's 2 or 3 feet tall, has more leaflets, a longer leaf, and is more of a shade loving. It needs to be under the canopy in a shade loving. And here we have Pacific Wax Myrtle. Now this plant is more on the coastal side of the peninsula. It's a great native plant. You can prune it as a hedge, as a shrub. It's great smelling. Birds absolutely love it. So it's just a really great one if you want to have that hedge look. And I'm going to go over just a few of the ground covers. Here we have false lily of the valley, Myanthemum dilatatum. I think I'm pronouncing that right. False lily of the valley needs to have full shade, kind of a dry woodland soils, and just a beautiful flower in the lily family. Kinnikinnick, Arctostaphylos uva ursi, and then wild strawberry are also really great ground covers. Fragaria species, there are several species of strawberries that you can choose from. Kinnikinnick, these both can handle full sun. Kinnikinnick can definitely handle full sun. Gets this nice red berry here, very mealy. And also the strawberry can handle full sun. There's varieties. You need to look it up because there's varieties that can handle full sun and also full shade as well. And we got to talk about our ferns for sure because we are the Northwest. Sword fern right here, beautiful, so gorgeous in the landscape. Needs somewhat of a shaded. It will crisp up and burn in the direct sunlight. Wonderful next to large pieces of wood or rock, and yeah, just a gorgeous plant. Lady fern, Ethereum felix femina, gets tall. It can get up to 4 feet tall. I've just seen it. It can grow in wet to dry conditions. It's bigger in wet conditions. A wonderful fern. We're so lucky we have so many ferns in the Northwest. And bunchberry. This is one that grows under the canopy, Cornus canadensis. That dogwood type flower, just so gorgeous. And twin flower, Linnea borealis. It has 2 flowers that come out. It's kind of a viney ground cover. None of these ground covers are super aggressive though. You do have to kind of encourage them along. And then we have the wild ginger right here, this heart-shaped leaf right here. And here's the wild ginger flower. It's just incredible. It grows, it's really hard to see, like right about now. If you see some wild ginger and you lift up those leaves, you will see this maroon flower. This flower is pollinated by ground beetles. It's just such a cool, or anything on the ground like ants or even little flies crawling around. Such a great flower. Not many people see it because it's hidden underneath the leaves. But if you're out in the woods and you see it, you just lift up those leaves, and right about now you'll see the flower. And we also have the fringe cup right here, Tolema grandiflora. Hummingbirds use this. Just a beautiful flower, woodland flower. And same with the wild violets. These are really great for shady ground covers. Okay, I just wanted to kind of stop here and see if there are any questions. I'm going to go back a slide, see if there are any questions, because I know we covered a lot of plants. Now, I didn't cover all of them, but I just want to pause and see how you guys are doing.
And we do have a few questions that have come in during the presentation in the chat box.
Okay.
Diana had a question regarding serviceberry in Maryland. Got a lot of rust and insect infestation, and just wondering if the serviceberries here in the Northwest have that same issue.
You know, I have not seen it. I've spent a lot of time in the woods, and I actually have 2 serviceberry bushes. I have not seen it. Not to say it's not here, but yeah, I haven't seen it. So yeah.
Okay, good news. Also, another question regarding willow recommendations. Any recommended species for willows on the west end? There's a comment that from Tiffany that she's not seen a lot of willows out there despite how wet it is. Any suggestions for west end willows?
Right. You know, there's just not a lot of willows out there because we've done some restoration planting out there, and there's definitely not a lot. You know, it's funny how the plants just kind of divide themselves, and that is one clue that you want to take from nature, is that maybe that's not the plant out there. Maybe it's more of cottonwood, which kind of acts like a willow. It's huge though. Cottonwood is huge. But it still is not bad. But taking those clues from nature is just really good also. So I can't give you a clear recommendation on a willow out west, because I agree with you. There are not many out there.
Great. Another question. Do you know about how many years old a mock orange needs to be before you start seeing blooms and flowers?
Okay. Mock orange, okay, it can grow slow. I've experienced it growing slow, really slow, but other people say it grows really fast. At least 3 years, probably 3 to 4 years. And then once it gets established and bigger, then it will start blooming a little bit more. And it's not super prolific, but then again, I've seen ones that are super prolific, and it's trying to find that right spot for it, you know? So it doesn't really answer the question, but yeah.
Great. Okay. Thanks, Kim. Another question. You mentioned you have to encourage some ground cover along. It can be slow growing. Any suggestions on how you can help it spread quicker?
Yeah. So most ground covers, they, you know, vegetatively spread. So you can actually, once it's established, you can cut off sections and spread them out a little bit more and keep it really weeded to get the ground cover. Ground covers, you know, you're just gonna have to weed them because they're just not, the ones that the native ground covers are not aggressive. So.
Great. Okay, I think at this time, that's all I have for questions in the chat box. We can kind of wait a few minutes here and see if folks want to unmute themselves and ask any questions directly, or feel free to throw a few more questions in the chat box. As Kim's, you know, working through the second kind of half of the presentation, she does plan to break at the end, and hopefully we'll have some time for question and discussions then. So anything else we can tackle right now?
Good afternoon. This is Rick Vokes.
Hi.
I really appreciate you doing this, Kim. My problem is, and I don't know if you're going to cover it in the next session, but I have a 1 acre farm pond and riparian areas and wetlands around it. And my problem has been trying to find information on pond plants and managing a pond. So do you have any recommendations?
Yeah, so I am not going to go into the aquatic plants, like actually in the water plants. Gosh, boy, you know, they're kind of specialized. There's a really fantastic aquatic plantain, and there is, and I can't remember the Latin name right now. And there's pondweed and there's cattail. Beware if you plant cattail, it's super aggressive and it will take over. It might even take over the whole pond if your pond is shallow enough. So go lightly on the cattail, or think hard about that. But if your pond is deep enough, cattail is a wonderful plant, bird plant. And boy, yeah, I can look some things up because they're not on the tip of my tongue right now. Aquatic plants are a whole different thing, but yeah, there's a lot of really great aquatic plants out there. So you should have fun with that.
Yeah, I've been thinking about cattails because we had some runoff on a construction site, so it made part of the pond really shallow, but it drops off to a deeper area, and cattails would kind of hold the soil and maybe help in the
cattails are all around good for, runoff, and they're just a really great transition from land to water plant, and also willows and spirea, which I wish I would have put in a spirea slide, but I didn't.
It's okay. I've got plenty of willows.
Okay.
Plenty of willows and cottonwood. So yeah, those are working out well. Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yep, you bet.
We had another question come in via chat that said, propagating twinberry, do you know if cuttings work, or would it be more successful to try from seed? The only ones they have growing are just kind of volunteers popping up.
I am going to talk about live staking plants in my next session, but boy, I wonder, I am not sure if twinberry live stakes, like from cuttings, maybe if you grow it in a greenhouse and start it. I can't give a definitive answer there. I know that the elderberries do great, and same with red twig dogwood, and same with devil's club. They all propagate through live stakes and cuttings. I mean, so many things do, willows and cottonwoods, but I just don't know about twinberry. If you find out, let me know if it works.
Let's see, another question about water-loving trees and shrubs. Could those be a concern, like seeking out water or sewer pipelines?
Yeah, so 30-foot setback from sewer water is great, and I definitely wouldn't plant cottonwood near the water or sewer lines. Yeah, yes, it is a concern. And you just want to really protect your water sewer pipes and those pipelines. So yeah, I would definitely consider that.
Any other questions folks want to unmute and ask? Go ahead now, and if not, I'm going to turn things back over to Kim for the rest of the presentation.
Okay, we're just going to march forward here. So Keystone species, this is just really important, and you want to have the most impact that you can for the plants that you plant. So this is part of Doug Tallamy's research, where he researched plant insect interactions. And so Salix, take the Salix species right here, all the willows, okay? And right here, they have, I'm sorry, I can't read that. I think it's 289. I know this is really small. 289, they host that many caterpillar species that use this plant. And so that's what you want to go for. And also 14 pollen specialists, bee specialists also. So this is just a really good guide right here to help you plant plants that are not only good for you, but are good for our pollinators and our bees and our different Lepidoptera. And here's even more. And I wanted to throw this in there. I put it in with the email as well, but I couldn't find a good PDF document to send you guys. I just had to create one by taking a screenshot, and I'm going to keep searching for a good PDF document of these plant insect interactions, because the number of caterpillar species that trees host is critical to wildlife health. And this is just excellent research that Doug Tallamy did. So I think you guys should all dig into this and make your decisions here based on things like this. And I did want to mention some of our native grasses. Our native grasses are, they're just wonderful. A lot of them are clump type grasses, like that's a clumper. And the Elamis glaucus, okay, I'm gonna start here. The Elamis glaucus, which is the blue wild rye, is a wonderful grass. It's a grass that we plant all over for restoration sites. Say we have big machines going on the riverbanks and we're putting in log jams. Elamis glaucus is the #1 restoration grass. It's a wonderful grass. It's not super aggressive though. A lot of our native grasses are not aggressive. So oftentimes they get eaten out by other invasive grasses. But these are, if you're looking to regrass areas, you should consider these grasses. Blue wild rye, Deschampsia cespitosa, tufted hairgrass. And as you can see, this is not good for a lawn because it grows in clumps and tufts. Romero's fescue here. This one is also grows in clumps or tufts as well. Romero's fescue is good for a meadow habitat. And all of these grasses are just super important to for our pollinators so that they can have safe places to overwinter. And red fescue here is a shorter, more water-loving, clumpy grass right here. And then the Carex obnupta, this is a sedge. This is great for wet areas. I mean, we planted a ton of this. We throw out seed in our restoration projects on riverbanks. And this is just a wonderful native sedge, kind of grass-like, but it's a sedge, really. And so I just wanted to mention these grasses. They're wonderful for any sort of grass needs that you might have, and how, I just want to emphasize grasses are so important. And this is why you should, if you mow, your first mowing, mow on a really high setting, because there are bees and wasps and things that are overwintering right in the surface underneath the grass. They need all these little like tussocky, clumpy areas. That's where they overwinter, and that's where they're protected. So going back to more landscape design, here are some of the options to just really define different areas. simple little pathways through the woods. Now, you would have to weed these pathways as detritus falls, soil will create, or just re-mulch them every year. Trails and paths. This rock border is just a really great natural way. I've seen this done on lots of landscaping yards. Natural landscaping is just so beautiful, but there is maintenance involved. You have to weed as well. And just a simple little fence like this. I mean, you can just do these sort of natural rock borders and fences that just give you that really good look, like, okay, it's not all wild. I am taking care of it, you know. And again, I wanted to mention EcoTurf, which is a grass alternative, and it cannot handle high traffic or, but it is great for open spaces and pollinators. And here is a picture of planting on top of a septic. You want to use shallow plants. And any trees or large shrubs should be 30 feet from your drain field or septic. Plant shallow on the septic. They're great for a little meadow. So I'm not going into installing meadows because it's really a big project and there's a lot to installing a native meadow. But Northwest Meadowscapes was on the resource page that I gave you. You should check out their website. They not only have native seed for grasses and meadows, they teach you how to install a meadow. Meadows are, you know, a labor of love. You know, you really have to, since there are areas where there's grass, you know, you really have to keep all the weeds out. And so a little like wildflower meadow on top of a septic would be great, or something like this, a lavender patch. And here's just a list of some of the plants that are, you know, shallow rooted and would go great on top of a septic. And I just want to encourage, you know, if you're not going 100% native, you can integrate it in. There's lots of opportunities. You know, the hydrangeas here look so fantastic with the ferns, and integrate as many native plants as possible. And if you're so lucky to have skunk cabbage, wow, that's amazing, because skunk cabbage is one of the most beautiful native plants ever. And that I think, that's my opinion. And so I just had to show a picture of it because I love it. And here's even kind of a more formal pathway. And there's enough room for the water to soak through these pavers, around these pavers, with a nice little bench there. It's just, there's so much. I just want to encourage everybody to integrate as many native plants as possible. And so when you get your base map of your property, you can kind of start, this is kind of your next phase here, where you can, okay, I am going to put, you know, I'm going to have my native woodland here and maybe put a tool shed here. You know, you can just really piece it out. And I know I only gave you really the heights of the trees and shrubs, and I need to really create a good document that gives the widths as well. At this point, you're just going to have to research stuff because I don't have that resource for you. I just couldn't find one. If anyone finds one, send it to me. And just really start piecing it out, you know, wet spots, dry spots, you know, wet shrubs, dry shrubs, like that. And remember, as you move along, that you want to leave habitat for our wildlife. The birds love brush heaps like this. They just hop around, and there's little bugs. And also the overwintering bees need little protected areas like this as well. And leave the dead trees, you know, if they're not threatening to fall on your house or, you know, on a shed or anything, if you feel comfortable, leave them. Or if you have a tree, a live tree that you need to take down, take down the top and let the rest go into a snag. These are all like really important bird features to really just give a chance and homes for wildlife. And here's another picture of snags. The woodpeckers love the snags as well. And I just want to talk a little bit about our overwintering bees and wasps. And they just, most of them are solitary nesters. They need safe places. So one fact that I was kind of stunned to find out is right here. Fewer than half the colonies that are out there are successful due to nest disturbance. Nest disturbance is a significant factor, whether through human activity or predators. So leaving your grass before you mow it that first time, leaving those wild areas, those brush heaps, so they can fully go out their cycle and overwinter. And of course, it's just all lack of habitat, lack of hedgerows, loss of wildflower landscapes, and destruction of woodlands are really creating a difficult place for our pollinators to overwinter. And so that about sums it up. I guess the pause really wasn't halfway through, but, take walks out in the woods, observe from nature. The Aldwell Lake bed is just a really amazing place of active restoration with native plants. Learn to identify your own plants. The Plants of the Pacific Northwest Coast by Pojar and McKinnon. It's an excellent book. Everybody should have it. All these places, just really observe from nature. And I just wanted to, say thank you for listening. Our next class is next Tuesday from 1 to 3, and that is May 3rd. And I will be talking about different planting techniques, diseases, invasive weeds, pests such as like deer even, and some of the solutions there, some of the insect diseases, and different planting techniques like live staking. So that will be May 3rd. We do have a walking tour set up for some of you. I had to close it down, but this Thursday, 9:30 to 11:30, each tour has 20 people in it. And so this Thursday, 9:30 to 11:30, there's the walking field trip tour at Peninsula College. And you just want to go to the visitors parking lot up off of Ennis Street, and I will be right there, right off the parking lot. I'll have a sign. And then the afternoon walking tours at the Dungeness River Nature Center from 1:30 to 3:30, which used to be the Dungeness River Audubon Center. It is now the Dungeness River Nature Center. And so we're going to get out on the ground and look at some of the plants, identify some of the plants, and talk a little bit more in depth. So yeah, with that, I just wanted to say thank you. I would just love to answer any questions that you have.
Kim, we have a few that have come in to the chat. One I think you touched on a little bit, but specifically worried about a Doug fir tree roots getting too close to the septic area. They're about 100 feet from the area now and about 40 feet from the drainage field. Would that be a concern?
I think you're fine there. Oh boy. I mean, you're right on the border there because Douglas firs, it depends on how old and how tall the Douglas fir is really. So.
Okay, great. Another question, you mentioned ecoturf. Can you explain a little bit more about what ecoturf is?
Yeah, it's just low growing, low maintenance species of plants. And I talked about it a little bit last time. It's got the Roman chamomile, alyssum, different plants that are a lawn alternative, but they cannot handle high traffic areas. You can walk across them, but they're not really to replace a lawn that's going to be used. And there's so many different seed mixes for the ecoturf, and they do provide pollinator habitat, and they're low maintenance, but you still do need to mow them every once in a while, but definitely not as high maintenance as a lawn.
Great. And then just to kind of continue on from that, Doug, for a question, if they decide the roots are getting too close, would it be ideal just to girdle it, to like make it a snag?
Yes, absolutely. Make it a snag tree. Cut off the top, it'll die back, the roots will stop growing, and make it a wonderful snag tree.